The role of the upper house will be limited and could ensure easy passage. So why the money bill route? Under Article 109 of the Constitution, a money bill cannot be introduced in the Rajya Sabha. Not just that, the upper house cannot reject or amend the bill, and it must be returned within 14 days. But the big question is, does the Bankruptcy Code qualify as a money bill? The Constitution states that the matters relating to imposing, abolishing or regulating a tax and government borrowing qualify as money bills. Not just that, regulating government borrowing and matters related to the consolidation fund or the contingency fund qualify as a money bill. Now, last week I'd spoken with the Coal and Power Minister Piyush Goyal on the possibility of the centre taking the money bill route for legislation, and Goyal did not rule out that possibility, and the government has exercised that route now, at least with the Bankruptcy Code. There were reports coming in yesterday that seemed to suggest, and this is something the Finance Minister has alluded to in the past as well, that the government may consider the money bill route in order to get over the impasse in the Rajya Sabha. Is that now a serious possibility for things like the Aadhaar bill, for things like the Bankruptcy Code?
See, all options are open. Wherever we think it's a national interest and the matters can be taken up by the Lok Sabha, which fortunately is functioning. I'm sure the government of the day has every right to, in the interest of the people, in the interest of economic progress, act.
Well, that was Piyush Goyal in conversation with me, saying that the government was open to exploring the money bill route, and that is exactly what they seem to have done today with the Bankruptcy Code. To discuss that, joining us now is the former Banking Secretary, Mr. D.K. Mittal. Mr. Mittal, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Let me first start by asking you for your comments on the manner in which the government has decided to take this forward using the money bill route. Now, if I look at the definition of money bills, the money bill route can be exercised for the imposition, abolition, remission, alteration or regulation of any tax. The Bankruptcy Code doesn't fall under that. How do you explain the route that the government has taken, which clearly is to circumvent the Rajya Sabha, which is paralyzed at this point in time? But how do you explain this going through the money bill route, given that it doesn't seem to fall under that category?
Well, this subject has been debated in the government a lot on many occasions, and government has used it in the larger interest of the nation. But I would agree that there is a grey area as to what could be qualified as a money bill. In past, there have been instances when something which was on the borderline was got cleared. So this will have to be tested, and this has the the potential of escalating the present animosity to a different level when the opposition parties find that perhaps the government is trying to circumvent the process. So it has both the sides. Well, it has to be run through the system, and let us see how can it be through the system to ultimately get delivered.
But is there really any grey area here, Mr. Mittal? Because again, if I'm looking at the definition of the money bill, the imposition, abolition, remission, alteration or regulation of a tax, the custody of the consolidated fund or the contingency fund of India, the appropriation of monies out of the consolidated fund of India, the declaration of any expenditure to be expenditure charged on the consolidated fund of India. And if I look at what the bankruptcy bill says, to consolidate and amend the laws relating to reorganization and insolvency resolution of corporate persons, partnerships and individuals in a time-bound manner. I mean, is there really any grey when we talk about whether this falls under the category of a money bill at all?
No, I agree what you're reading, and I'm not an expert on the subject, but you trust me, this must have been looked into by the government very carefully in consultation with the Ministry of Law, and they won't like to do, and they won't do anything which is not legally permissible. So this must have been tested there. Without that, they must have found some place where they could put this bill in, and then only they will introduce it like that.
Right. I mean, one of the provisions is that if there is a question that arises whether a bill is a money bill or not, the decision of the Speaker of the House of the People thereon shall be final. So as you point out, maybe there has been legal opinion that's been sought, and that is the way that the government intends to go. But on the Bankruptcy Code itself, sir, as the former Banking Secretary, this is something that we've been waiting for. It's a 180-page bill. You've obviously read through some aspects of what the government is proposing to put in place. What would you say are the key highlights, and what gives you the confidence that if this does indeed go through, it is going to certainly be a good step, not just for corporations but also for startups?
See, this bill is a very forward-looking measure, and it has been, so to say, drafted by a very eminent person, Mr. Viswanathan, who has been a great legal affairs secretary. So there's no dispute that he has looked into everything very carefully. Without getting into the details, that's not the problem. The problem would come into implementation. You look at the earlier laws. I mean, let us take, for example, the law of BIFR. It has not delivered anything substantially. You take the law of liquidations, which is there in the Companies Act, and the new Companies Act provisions are yet to be notified. So the question will come, how do we implement it? It will require setting up a new tribunal. What happens to the existing cases, existing entity jurisdiction over this jurisdiction? So you will have many of those issues to be resolved before we can really start getting anything out of it.
All right, so a lot of pending issues that will need to be resolved as and when this does in fact become a law. But because it is the money bill route, and if in case the opposition does not raise this as an issue, then the government does not require the assent of the Rajya Sabha. A money bill only needs to be sent to the Rajya Sabha. The Rajya Sabha can not reject it, neither can it amend it, and this bill will be deemed to have been passed by both houses of parliament. But Mr. Mittal, appreciate you joining us here with a quick take on the Bankruptcy Code, which has been tabled in the Lok Sabha today via the money bill route. Up next on What's Hot, the FIFA ethics